Hi, I'm FauxRetro, and today I want to talk about Neopets. Neopets is an interactive website that launched in 1999 by Adam and Donna Powell. Basically, it was an upgraded Tamagotchi where you created virtual pets, the titular Neopets, and cared for them by feeding them and making them feel better when they were sick. Eventually, the site was invested in by Doug Dorey and then later purchased by Viacom in 2005. This led to merchandising galore, including the subject of this video, Neopets: The Darkest Faerie for the PlayStation 2. Do you remember it? No? XPlay reviewed it.
Thank you for calling 1-900-NINJA-LOVE. A ninja will be with you momentarily.
Hello? 2005 was crazy. Neopets: The Darkest Faerie was a 3D action-adventure game released exclusively for Sony's console on November 16, 2005 in North America. The Darkest Faerie received average reviews upon release, and from what I can tell, seems to be largely forgotten at this point. But no more! Let me please remind you about this weird, flawed, glitchy, yet lovable game. We start the game with this, ominous cutscene.
Others are of the darkest kind.
For those who don't know, the statue right here that's turned the ocean into Fanta grape is the Darkest Faerie. She'll be our villain. And no, the cutscenes aren't gonna look any better than this. Cool title treatment though. We start the game as Tormund, or Tor for short, a yellow loop who's play fighting with his sister, and, well...
Arrgh! I'll tear your gizzard out like a croquebec. Merida will be mine!
Can you imagine that the cutscenes were an original selling point for me in 2005? Honestly, they aren't that bad, just a bit janky. Thankfully, the voice acting all around is generally solid when everyone isn't making weird and bizarre groans and gasps. We start the game having to herd some pets, Winnies, into a pen. It is not fun, and I don't know why they thought this would be the way to start an open-world action-adventure game, but, here we are. Oof. Anyway, Tor is the son of farmers who dreams of bigger things, like becoming a knight in the nearby kingdom of Meridel. He gets his chance when his father has him run an errand there, and after giving him a crappy wooden sword, we're off to begin Act 1 of our grand adventure. Along the way to Meridel, we save a blind beggar from a group of bandits. Once you save him, he gives Tor a pat down and an amulet. Now I want to get into the game's combat. It's pretty basic, pressing the circle button to attack with your sword and holding L1 to block with your shield once you get one. There are also other attacks like a spin slash that you achieve by spinning the left analog stick and a charge up attack by holding circle. Simple stuff. You need to make sure you time your button presses with that little light at the tip of your sword. That allows you to do a standard 3-hit combo with the more powerful strike at the end. Don't just mash that circle button, you baby child. Tor will just wildly stab in a random direction that will lead to many a death and frustration that will make you chunk your controller into your TV.
Oh, Zach!
You! Now, on our way to Meridel, we can perform various side quests like play hide-and-seek with this obnoxious child, and ward off some groovin' plants in some gardens.
Nice.
You also can fight off some crocobacks for another farmer to save what remains of his crop of cicados. Yes, cicados. Chocolate-flavored tomatoes. Full disclosure, I never used the actual Neopets website when I was a kid, so I don't know if cicados are a thing, but suffice to say, it nasty. We reach Meridel and, well, this happens. Thankfully, Old Knight, yes, that is his name in the game as listed, saves us and says we should be a squire. Tor says, gosh diddly dang, I agree, and we're off. We need a sponsor, so after finding pieces of his broken sword on a random scaffold along with bribing a prisoner, we find a Meridel knight to sponsor us. But wait, we still need our parents to give us permission. So now we backtrack to the farm. Wait, what's that? What did I say? Backtracking? Yes, and there's a ton. I truly love this game, I really do. But it's an early open world game which, while very ambitious for its time, it's a relatively large place with not a lot going on between major locations, so expect to be backtracking and running back and forth a lot. Like, a lot. Thank God holding R1 lets you sprint, because lordy, this would get monotonous real quick. Also, Mirka speed potions. back to the farm and little sister is missing. Oh no. So even though her paperwork is easily more important than her well-being, go to the swampy forest area required in all platformers and save the sister from the eco plant from Jack and Daxter, but with this gorgeous face. So pretty. So yeah, paper sign, sayonara rural life, and now we're a squire. Yeah! And now we get to do chores. Yeah. Once Tor's a squire, there's a whole lot of nonsense to do. They start teaching you combat techniques that you probably have figured out at some point, and you have to do things like collect mice for this older lady by sticking around like this, and clog duty. Clog duty is where I got stuck in this game back when I played it in 2005. The sewers are a very dark area where I had to turn my brightness up to see what was even going on, and it just seems cruel to make me do this, but, you know, whatever. It's done. Next up, we learn that the nearby mining town of Kogum is being attacked by the neighboring Ixie tribe. Since the knight who's supposed to go with Tor is busy stuffing his fat face, it looks like we're on our own on this one. Now to get to the Ixie chief, we're going to enter the wonderful world of platforming. The Darkest Faerie isn't amazing at this. The controls are responsive enough, but there's some weird design choices like automatically making you sneak on edges, but only sometimes, and doing one of those Zelda-like automatic jumps when you run off an edge. Makes for some frustrating moments, to say the least. We arrive at the lair of the Ixie chieftain, and he just kind of keels over after a few hits. No big deal. It also helps if you use moats. Moats are the main focus of the magic system in the Darkest Faerie. Each little guy with a smiley face represents a different element, from fire to water to wind to earth, etc. Basically, if you're fighting a fire-aligned enemy, you want to have a water moat on your weapon for offense, and fire moats on your shield and armor for defense. Got it? Good. It can be hard to guess the alignment of enemies, but typically their color palette and their name will give some indication. You'll be fine. We now hear of bad news coming from Illisen's Glade. Illisen is an earth fairy, and it seems like there's some strange purple clouds gathering above where she lives. The Knights of Meridel go to see what's the matter, but Tor wakes up the next morning to learn that no one has returned. We head to the Glade ourselves and have to free all the knights who are clearly wimps who can't do anything right. A bunch of wereloops infest the forest and prove to be some of the tougher enemies Tor has faced thus far. However, a fault of the combat of the Darkest Faerie is that there is no incentive to fight the enemies save for some meager amounts of Neopoints. And since wereloops have to rear back before they attack, we can easily avoid them without having to fight unless we end up surrounded. This is a major problem with the Darkest Faerie's combat, as a lot of encounters can be simply avoided as to not waste precious healing and restoring items. Now once we free all of the Meridel Knights, we take a lift up to Illisen's village. We meet up with the old knight who is unceremoniously stabbed in the back and killed by the Wereloop King. After fighting this thing, and getting another tutorial that comes way too late about moats, we defeat the boss and rush to Illisen, who has collapsed on the ground. We're unfortunately too late, and Illisen is possessed by the magic of the Darkest Faerie. She does a little kitty swipe at Tor, for who some reason decides to panic and fall off the platform. Nice going. We hold the R1 button all the way back to Meridel to find Tor crowned a Knight of the Kingdom, 3rd class. That was pretty damn quick. We wake up the next morning learning that Darkest Faerie has officially returned. She actually came back in a previous cutscene that I'll show you now because it is thoroughly entertaining. Magic. We now have to face the Darkest Faerie sisters, who are so much fun and the actors are clearly having a blast playing.
Of course, dear sister. It's about time we had some amusement.
They don't have much to do other than float around and blast attacks at you, and Tor is powerless, so the only thing we can do is escape. After dodging a bunch of attacks from the sisters and a bunch of high-powered enemies, Tor gets help from the castle maid who we helped with the mice earlier and escapes into the waters below the town. And thus we end Act 1. If you couldn't tell already, Tor's story arc follows the classic hero's journey to a T, being a small farm boy who comes from small beginnings but is destined for greatness, to be a hero. It's all kinds of cliche at this point, but the land of Neopia and its inhabitants are so endearing and fun, I really can't complain. And then there's Roberta. Poor Roberta. We start Act 2 of the story as her, a diplomat from the neighboring kingdom of Brightvale. We land in Fairyland where Roberta arrives with her mentor Seradar to warn of the purple clouds forming over various areas of Neopia, the same purple clouds that have just overtaken Meridel and possessed the king. Roberta, an Akara, wants to be a sorceress and has been secretly receiving magic training from Seradar. Got that? Okay, then forget it, because this game does not care about Roberta at all. She shows up at Fairyland and gets a little bit of training as a long-range magic user. The Darkest Faerie shows up and captures Fiora.
Dearest Fiora.
And Roberta escapes after getting an amulet like Tor from a mysterious lady she's helped earlier. It turns out the amulets protect Roberta and Tor from the Darkest Faerie, and thus they can't be cursed. And that's it. That very quickly ends Act 2. It's a real shame about Roberta. She's the niece of the King of Brightvale, a diplomat, and a secret magic user. There's a ton of potential to develop her as a second protagonist, and a good foil for Tor, but the game just kind of chunks her off a cliff, literally, and just keeps any kind of character development locked away for no one to find. Tor gets an approximately 5 to 8 hour introduction as he goes from simple farmer to unlikely hero, and Roberta gets maybe 45 minutes tops to introduce herself. It's just disappointing. So we're quickly off to Act 3, which will make up the bulk of the game. Roberta lands on a small beach, where Tor also finds himself as he's been drifting in the water after barely escaping Meridel. It's at this point in the game where we gain control of both Tor and Roberta, as we're able to switch between the two characters anytime during gameplay. This becomes effective with dealing with a variety of enemies that'll now be thrown at you due to the near entirety of Neopia being covered in the Darkest Faerie's purple possession clouds. That means enemies can jump out at any moment, so it's good to use Tor for close range fights while Roberta for long range. We head to Roberta's home kingdom of Brightvale, the only place untouched by the Darkest Faerie's magic. It's here we encounter the Gellert Assassin, an evil henchman hired to kill our protagonists. Now this guy used to legitimately scare me when I played this game as a kid. In my paranoid adolescent brain, I thought the assassin could pop up at any moment in the game and try to kill me, unscripted. Suffice to say, I was stupid. You do have to fight him for a few seconds in the initial encounter with him outside Brightvale, but when two wimpy guards get a little too close to him, he leaves like a big fat coward. I don't know why I was so intimidated by him. After stopping by the King of Brightvale to explain the situation, we receive our task that will cover the entirety of Act 3. Save every area in Neopia from the darkness. That includes Illison's Glade, Market Town, Tor's Farm, Cogum, Bogshot Swamp, and finally Meridel. We'll also have to infiltrate the Wereloop Woods to steal back Illison's charm from the Wereloop King. At this point, the game world fully opens up and we're free to explore wherever we want, except for Meridel, which is covered in super ultra special darkness, making it inaccessible to everyone. This is the Darkest Faerie at its best, where we get to explore the open world and complete our main objectives along with a few side quests that honestly aren't worth getting into. There's a sincere sense of satisfaction whenever you defeat a boss of an area and the purple clouds vanish, leaving the section free to explore without worry of sudden monster attacks. Well, except for bandits. Yeah, you seem real worried, don't you? So we do it. The one downside of this act is that some of the bosses, like the Jumpy Monster and the Ixie Chieftain, are simply powered up versions of the enemies we already faced. The Ixie Chieftain is the worst offender, who goes down so easily it's hilarious. I had 10 times more trouble trying to dodge those dumbass minecarts than fighting his pathetic hide. Get used to that game over screen due to poor platforming, folks. Now my favorite of all these areas is probably Market Town. While the boss with the Dark Knight is honestly nothing to write home about, the design of the town is a lot of fun, and while obviously the PS2 has its graphical limits, it feels like a bustling kind of place. Bogshot Swamp is way too dark and the boss really sucks, and the Wereloop layer is fine, but drags on way too long. And everywhere else is just a general repeat of places you've already been. Oh, and the assassin likes to pop up sometimes, be a snarky little and poof away. Wow, impressive assassinating you doing there, bud. Gold star, 10 out of 10. Also, the assassin is played by Simon Templeman from the underrated comedy The Neighbors, and I just find that kind of hilarious.
Husband?
Wife, I've got something for you under my slip. A bra. Seductive purr.
Now, as we free these lands from the Darkest Faerie's grasp, we gain items like a priceless treasure from Market Town, Illison's charm from the Wereloop King, and a Cloak of Heroes from the Bogshot Swamp Folk. The Cloak of Heroes is an item that Tor and Roberta can wear to avoid contact with monsters, though it doesn't work all the time. There's also this traveling salesman who claims that you can buy things from him without being attacked. F***ing liar! Once we've freed every single area, we can finally enter Meridel. After having to waste my precious Neo points on this cheeky bastard, we're able to get underground to try to find Fiora's wand, a legendary weapon that we have to retrieve to defeat the Darkest Faerie. After completing some puzzles, this Weeblet one is actually pretty fun if a little topsy-turvy.
Where am I?
We fight a skeleton dragon and retrieve the wand. And, if you're me, you make a dumb mistake and fall into a pit of lava because I don't know how to video game and have to fight the boss and retrieve the wand a second time. Great! We work our way back up to Meridel Castle and put an end to the Darkest Faerie's hilarious sisters.
Who dare disturb the King of Drool?
You? We thought we killed you!
And save Meridel from darkness. King Scarl says good job and hightails it out of there. Roberta summons her Deus Ex Twilight Sparkle, and we head off to Fairyland to save Fiora. This doesn't exactly go to plan in Fiora, since Tor and Roberta to find Jordana, an ancient hero of the Lost Kingdom of Altador, to finally put a stop to the Darkest Faerie. It's here where we begin Act 4, the final act of the game. We have to visit each of the 4 sections of Altador and free the Guardians from each area. Now, I really like Altador as a location. It's definitely stressful at first with the high-powered enemies constantly spawning, but each section has a different kind of trade. These sequences are okay for the most part, and serve as the final trials before the end of the game. This one bit, though, with a maze and trying to keep this enemy on the button is very stressful. I did it in 2 tries. I don't know how, but I did it. Good luck, I don't have faith in you because I didn't have faith in me. Moving on. Completing these challenges, including an arena fight in a fun stealth section, followed by the worst part of the game. Platforming does not work no matter how much I try. Dear Lord, why is this in the game? Why would you do this to me with your terrible floating jumping controls? By the way, all the water in Altador is yellow and it looks like urine to my immature brain. Who signed off on this? Ugh. Anyway, we save all the Guardians who, big shock, reveal themselves to be people we have met on our journey. There's the beggar frog, the old knight, the mice maid, our night sponsor, and the traveling lying asshole. How dare you? By freeing the final Guardian, Jordana, we have finally saved Altador from eternal darkness and we return to the future. Yeah, we were somehow in the past this whole time. Don't think about it too much because it's an unnecessary detail. It's time to begin the epic final battle with the Darkest Faerie, who casts a spell causing Fairyland to fall out of the sky and threaten to crash down on top of Meridel. It's all come down to this. We have limited time to defeat our malicious foe. Let's take her down. Well, that was underwhelming. But yeah, we've done it! The Darkest Faerie is no more and Neopia returns to a land of happiness and light. Tor and Roberta are honored by Fiora and their family and friends along with the Guardians of Altador, and thus the game ends with the Darkest Faerie being turned into a fountain centerpiece. Kind of a grim piece of architecture, if you ask me. And that's Neopets the Darkest Faerie. I was being a bit snarky throughout, but I really do love this game. It's very ambitious with its open world fantasy design, and its pretty deep lore takes your typical hero's journey story and makes it at least relatively more exciting. The characters are for the large part fun to interact with, and while some could have used a lot more development, Roberta, I came away with appreciation for the effort Idle Minds put into what could have been just your typical licensed game. It does have its issues from poor platforming and some awkward combat encounters, but it all ends up to be a fun, yet heavily flawed game. And the glitches. Thought I'd forget, wouldn't you? Yes, the Darkest Faerie is rather infamously known by those who remember it for its glitches. Thankfully though, the only problem I ran into were frequent times when the game's score, which is composed by Jack Wall and Keith Leary, doesn't play, leading to long stretches of sprinting with utter silence with the occasional audio cue. Also, some Neopians still looked cursed after saving their area, but that's pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. Overall, I'd say if any parts of the game struck your interest, you should play it for yourself. It definitely has its problems, but it's an endearing, exciting fantasy adventure that seems to have been largely forgotten about, which is a shame. My little gamer heart dreams that someday this game will garner cult classic status, especially with Neopets the website still continuing today, but we'll just have to wait and see. I at least enjoyed my time with it again, and I hope that maybe this video will lead to others to play it and have fun with this flawed gem in the future. Thanks everyone for watching my very first video here on YouTube. I'll definitely be continuing with discussing even more games in the future, but in the meantime, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing so you can check out all of my future content. And you can also follow me on Twitch. I stream my entire playthrough of Neopets on there and I'm on all the time, so give me a follow on there as well. See you later.